Resuming. Weird World Order broadcast. Dialer phones connected. Initiating broadcast signal in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ladies, gentlemen, and knights of the Nerd World Order, this is the Nerd World Order broadcast. I'm the man that you call Dukes, and to my right, it's all about the...
Booyah! What's up? It's your boy Joe, baby.
And to my other right, coming straight out of Krakoa, weighing in at 178 adamantium field pounds, Alfonso X-Man Flores.
Hello, Wednesday. I've come to you to talk to you about a very special school for gifted youngsters.
And with that, Alfonso introduces what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the Netflix series Wednesday, which has been very popular. A lot of members of the Nerd World Order are talking about it. And so Joe and Alfonso have seen it. And so the three of us, with very limited contribution from me, are going to be talking about Wednesday today. Gentlemen, just getting into the initial, what made you guys want to check out this show?
Well, personally, I mean, I've always liked the Addams Family. The whole Wednesday having her own show kind of intrigued me because, it's always been Morticia and Gomez, and I was curious to see what a grown-up Wednesday was going to be like, What about you, Joe?
I didn't really care too much for the TV show. I remember watching the first two in the movie theaters, but scrolling TikTok, you kept seeing the dance that Wednesday was doing, and the more you saw it on TikTok, you're like, maybe I should check this show out. And then, of course, watch the first episode, and I thought it was really good.
When I saw the dance on TikTok, clearly it didn't motivate me to want to see the show. I think it's weird how you can have a meme that becomes so popular that it has to be shared in a show. So I thought it was cool, but I didn't think it was cool when people would do the meme. So I wasn't like, oh wow, they're just reproducing it. So I wasn't really compelled to watch the show. But I'm glad you guys did, and I know a lot of other people did, and they've enjoyed it. Alfonso, won't you tell me a little bit about as far as like the family dynamic? Can you get into a little bit of that? Help us understand it a little bit more.
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, the Addams Family, even though they're kind of the outsiders, they're looked on by the world as like creepy, kooky, mysterious, and spooky. It's in the song. Anyway, even though they were looked at like that, if you watch the show, that family's always been very tight knit. They always have each other's back. They're always super functional. So even though they're the ones looking like the weirdos, they're the ones who are really having the good family dynamic that is kind of missing in America today. So for the most part.
Well, for me personally, I feel like that's what America wants to see now is, previously everything had to reflect the idealism of what America should be. I would call it propaganda. I feel like a large majority of what we received or what we were force-fed as media consumers was idealistic. And I think if we were to step back and look at, like, I'll say Cliff Huxtable as an example, everybody called him America's dad, and our reality became very different from that. So I don't think that they would be able to portray the Addams Family the way that they've done in the past, because I feel like nobody would accept this perfect family dynamic. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm glad they did it differently. To Alfie's point, they were very, very cool together. They got along fine, and this one was you could see that there's some turmoil within their family, and that's the stuff I want to see. I want to see something where it starts from like they're not connected to where it eventually works its way for them to be more connected. So I thought the way they did this was pretty good for me.
Yeah, I was super intrigued with the fact that, I mean, Wednesday and Morticia, they always got along swimmingly, and then for them to be at odds, like a real family, a mother and a teenage daughter. I mean, it's so common for them to be, kind of tooth and nail at times, because it's all part of growing up and finding yourself and being your own person, but you're still living under your parents' roof. So they had some problems with her. They found that she was being disruptive in school, but in actuality she was just taking care of her little brother. There were some jocks, of course, picking on poor little Pugsley, and Pugsley was a little bit of weirdo, stuffed in a locker. She found him, saved him, and immediately found that she has this power that kicks in. And oh, by the way, spoilers, full spoilers for this whole episode. She was actually able to see like psychic images of what had happened to him, and she saw the swim team messing with him, locking him in the locker. So she went to her swim practice with a couple of bags of piranha, and she said, "Nobody gets to torture my brother but me." And she dropped the piranha in the pool. Needless to say, she got expelled. How'd you like that part, Joe?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty funny. I was because I don't remember like that. She didn't have any psychic stuff other than the Netflix series, right?
No, nothing at all. Like her and Morticia were always portrayed as like witches. I never really understood what Gomez's supernatural claim was, but yeah, those two were more witchy.
Okay. Yeah, because Dukes, when they went to the school, I mean, they had werewolves, they had witches, they had
vampires.
Yeah, vampires and etc. It reminds me of like Harry Potterish, kind of like a school where like they have people that were different, and they had a name for normal people. They call them normies, and I was like, kind of fun, kind of like, really, dude, that's the best nickname you can come up with. But I thought that was pretty cool. I liked it.
The term normies is actually rather prevalent right now. I listen to a conspiracy podcast broadcaster, Isaac Weishoff, and he refers to people who haven't been indoctrinated into the world of conspiracy theories as normies. That's actually a pretty popular term now. I'm surprised that they use that in this show, but it also makes sense because it's like anyone who feels like they're on the fringe, they call everybody else normies. So it's funny how they did that.
Yeah, punk rockers did that a lot too in the 70s and 80s. Everybody else were normies.
I wasn't into the punk rock scene, even though my first introduction into let's say guitar-based music was the Dead Kennedys. I never really went full force into punk rock.
Either did I. I remember Doug. My brother used to listen to 66 Sputnik. You guys ever heard of him? Okay.
No.
At the end of Ferris Bueller, at the end of the credit scene, the song that was playing in the background, that's 66 Sputnik.
Wow.
It was like a punk rock band. I remember watching. I was like, dude, that's because Doug always played that dang song, man.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a deep cut. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
One thing that you guys have said so far that has intrigued me was I feel like they're modernizing, but also not going for all the cliches. Like previously, it would have been the football team that would have picked on Pugsley. But now it's the swim team. Now, let me say, my son's on the swim team. I've been around the swim team. The swim team ain't picking on nobody. Maybe it's just my son's school. But the folks on the swim team would be calling everybody else normies because they see themselves as being a group that really isn't understood as far as how athletic they have to be. So I think it's interesting they went that route, but yeah, swim team ain't shoving nobody into lockers. Sorry, son. You ain't shoving nobody in lockers.
All right. So from here, where we go to is Morticia sees this as an excellent opportunity to send Wednesday to the school that she went to, her alma mater, where she met Gomez Adams, a school called Nevermore. And Nevermore is like long-term, old school. It's a boarding school for children of the supernatural, basically. She she thrived there, and she knows that this school is going to help Wednesday open up to her full potential as a person, because as a mother, that's what you want for your child, right? You want them to reach their full potential. And she's a little closed off to people. She doesn't make a lot of friends. She's not the hugging type. She doesn't high five. So they're really excited about this. They get us in her to Nevermore. She's got no choice because she has been expelled from the school that she was going to. Excuse me. And they send her away. They drive her off to school. Lurch is driving like always. And before they leave, they drop a little spy. And I don't know if you guys remember Thing, but the one hand opens up the bottom of the car, crawls right out, and goes, keep an eye on her. How'd you like Thing, Joe?
Thing is dope. I didn't really care too much for him in the the movie, a couple of movies that I've seen, but with Thing, he was more in the show and he did a lot more. And you start to think like, man, I need that around me. You know what I mean? Just to use him to whatever I needed to get done. And that's what she was doing with the Thing. And it was pretty cool to see that, the hand go everywhere and do certain things. And she could be almost like in two different places, and she had a spy and, report back everything. So I thought that was pretty cool.
One thing about Thing too, it was all practical effect. It was an actual hand. It was somebody with a green suit on that stopped at the hand. Yeah. And they weren't using CGI for that. And some of the things that he did and the angles he got in was pretty impressive. It was weird to see a hand with so much personality.
Yeah.
Do you remember Thing, Alan?
I absolutely do remember Thing, and I have a lot of questions. Joe is absolutely correct. Thing was annoying, dumb, useless in both the TV show, also the movies. How is he communicating and being so useful in this show?
Sign language. I think he texts. He does a lot of like anamorphic movements to kind of convey his point, and it works really well. You remember the TV show where actually there was like a box on the table and the whole arm would come out, and it was just like as if there was some kind of grotesque monster that just didn't want to come out other than his hand. This was awesome because he was like total Frankenstein too. He had all these cuts and scars, and he was sewn back together, and you could tell something was done, And many will speculate that it's Luke Skywalker's hand, because that was a galaxy far, far away a long time ago.
Yeah. Alan, the one thing that this TV show did was make you care about the Thing. Like each episode, you kind of like started liking the Thing a lot more, to where you thought he was going to die because he, towards the end, he got stabbed, and you're like, man, the Thing could die, because you were so invested in the Thing. Like he would do stuff like it's her birthday. She doesn't want to celebrate anything. So the Thing got everybody all together to lead her to like a tombstone where they can say, hey, happy birthday. And then she'd look at the Thing, and and with his little manner, like kind of like, oh, hey, I did this for you kind of thing. So it kind of, you could see the development. So much stuff was happening, Alan. Like, of course, Wednesday was having issues with her mom. She moves into a new roommate with a Ned, right? And a Ned is the opposite of her. So it's almost like light and day living together in one little room, which it does by certain angles from the sunshine directed inside like a open window that's dark lidded. But she made it very clear, this is my half, that's your half. And her friend's so animated, she's jumping, she wants to be her best friend, where Wednesday, she just wants to be by herself, and she thinks with life she's going to be a loner, she doesn't need anybody else. And you get to see those two grow together to have a friendship, as well towards the end with Wednesday having a better relationship with their mother, and her father,
I do have questions about, let's see here, Edith.
Enid.
And also about Thing. Enid. Okay, Enid. So my first question, going back to Thing starts out as a spy. Is it one of those things where he's clearly or immediately discovered, so he starts to align himself with Wednesday?
She finds him. She finds him under her bedspread, and she's like, "Come up here." And so she's like interrogating him, and she's like, "You know what? You're going to work for me, or you're going to spend the entire semester in this drawer, and you're going to try to claw your way out. You're going to mess up your nails, and we know how much you like your perfect manicure." And it's like he's like shaking, and he's like, finally he agrees to help her. She's like, "You're going to work for me now," and he's like, "Okay."
Awesome. Okay, so that answers that. My additional question about Enid. Everybody on the show is has some form of, let's say, reference, whether it be werewolves, vampires, psychic, witch, whatever. What sort of mythical creature is Enid?
She's a werewolf.
She's also at that stage where she's becoming a werewolf, and she's not wolfing out fully. So like she's really like seen by her parents as kind of like, you know, the bad seed. You know, she's not coming to fruition, and they're kind of embarrassed of her. You know, all she could do is like grow her nails, and they're super strong, of course, so that definitely helps. And it's so funny because she's a werewolf, but doesn't seem anything like it. You know, when Wednesday first gets to the bedroom that they share, I think it's kind of like in the attic. It looks like a rainbow threw up, right?
Yeah.
And then they make their introductions, and she basically kind of like shows her how standoffish she is. And the next time Enid comes back in the room, half of it's completely rainbow, half of it's black and white.
Yeah.
Right. They had a really cool stained glass window that was all pretty colors. Wednesday on her side took all the color out.
That's very cool. So so you guys have talked about Enid. What other characters were interesting in the show?
Well, in the school, and it's cool because like Joe described it as Harry Potter-ish. I kind of did the same thing, but you know, to me, it's more Xavier's mansion. Like she was rooming with Rain Sinclair, the Wolfsbane. But there was a few other characters like there was Xavier. That's funny. His name is Xavier. I don't know. He turns out he knew her from before. They met when they were like 10. He said he was at his grandmother's funeral, and he goes, "Remember, you saved my life?" And she goes, "Oh, that's right. You were in the casket." What? He goes, "Yeah, I was looking at my grandmother. And I fell in, and the casket lid closed on me, and I was screaming for help, and it was about to go into the furnace." And she goes, "Oh, well, I thought she was coming back to life. I just wanted to see that." So she ended up saving him from the furnace, and now he's kind of smitten over her, which is tough because he had actually just broken up with the most popular girl in school, Bianca.
What sort of monster is he, for lack of a better phrase?
How would you describe that, Joe? That was an interesting thing that he had.
The whole time you're explaining the story, right? I'm thinking how much Alan will not watch this show. To be honest, Xavier, bro, like, I'm like, so he makes drawings come alive? Like, Alan would have looked at that and be like, wait, what? So this is why Alan he's not going to watch it. So Christina Ricci is, she was Wednesday in the Addams Family, or the Addams Family 1 and 2, right?
Right.
She plays a teacher there, who they call a normie, right? And so you're thinking, so up to that point, she had her visions of like, she had an altercation with, what was that kid's name, Alfie? The one with the glasses who ended.
Yeah, he was basically he was kind of a nerd that was being pushed around, and Wednesday kind of came to his aid. Oh my gosh, that's the one name I didn't write down.
Never mind, it doesn't matter. So his mom tells him, they have a vision that Wednesday's going to come in and destroy the school. So he tries to attempt to, kill her. So he ends up getting murdered. She has her visions. And so now it's the CW where Xavier, who Alfie had said, like, hey, you saved my life. And then the other dude, who is the sheriff's son, right? And he portrays to be like the good guy, right? And then Xavier is the bad kind of guy, the bad boy, right? And then by the end of the movie, spoiler alert, the sheriff's son ends up being this creature Alan that's called the Hide, and pretty much you can manipulate a person that can turn into a Hide and mentally abuse them to where anything you say they'll do. He ends up being the bad guy, and then the other guy who ends up looking like he's a bad guy ends up being like the real nice guy that's always been there for since day one, where it's a love triangle.
Yeah.
And Duke's ain't gonna be down for no CW love triangle, dude. He's gonna be like, "What's this crap?" That's why it's funny we're talking about this. And I know Alan's like, "I'm not gonna watch that. I don't care what they say, even if it has the thing moving around."
Yeah.
You guys, you did have me interested until Joe said love triangle. Now that's like cross this off my list.
Yeah.
Come on. Cyclops and Wolverine and Jean Grey had the best love triangle ever, and everybody was down for that.
And not to mention, it's very predictable. Like the ending, Alan would have, Alan's a type. Oh, of course it's her. Of course, because they make it so simple. The thing that they did kind of throw you off is the ending. Yeah. Like what happened, but up to that point, you're kind of like, I bet you this is the person that's trying to get her killed, and it ends up being that person. It's very predictable. And then the love triangles, of course, I know you're not gonna. You wouldn't even last that, dude. You'd be like, what's this, dude? What is this? Which I didn't mind because it wasn't as bad as CW's mad drama, like with the Arrow. It wasn't that kind of bad, because it was kind of like, here's a little taste and give you little snippets, and it's not giving you the full dose, which CW used to do all the time.
How many episodes are there?
8.
10? 8.
No, 8.
Are they an hour or a half hour?
Like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll sit through 2 episodes and see how it is.
So get this. I just found out the other day, because I didn't really do any research into it, but on TikTok, podcasts pop up all the time for me because I post podcasts, and the Tom Welling and Rosenbaum podcast, the Smallville one, keeps popping up, and they're talking about like, oh, we're gonna do a Smallville reunion. We should really redo it, and people are like, oh yeah, you gotta do it. He goes, well, we're actually thinking about maybe doing an animated series. But the writers for Smallville just finished up Wednesday on Netflix, so they're almost free. So I was like, oh, the Smallville people wrote this.
See, Smallville, first of all, I think Smallville was CW before CW became CW. I feel like Smallville didn't go into the whole... I know there's the Lois Lane and Clark Kent Superman thing, but I feel like they didn't go overboard with the whole romance aspect.
I don't think they did, no.
Yeah, so, okay, that's another plus. Oh, so, Alfonso, what other characters were there that, might have been interesting, or was that pretty much it?
No, there was quite a few. And before we get, before I gleam over this, before looking at this, one thing that Wednesday did is they kind of, in my opinion, they kind of did the same kind of thing Buffy did. They followed that same Scooby-Doo format, where there's always going to be a bad guy, that it's always never who you think it is. And then they always bring in all the supporting characters. Mm-hmm. And some of the supporting characters, like Bianca, she was the love interest of Xavier before Wednesday got there. He didn't dump her because Wednesday was there. He dumped her because she's a siren. And classic siren, almost like a mermaid who's in the water, and they sing their songs, and the men follow the song into the water and they die, right? So they have a power to manipulate people, like a psychic power. And he was afraid that she was manipulating him into dating her, and she was kind of a jerk to everybody else in the school because she was, the mean girl, and he's like, I can't do this anymore. So, but she does wear a pendant. All the sirens in the school wear this pendant to suppress her powers a little bit, because otherwise they would do it without really thinking that they were doing it. She was a lot of fun. I mean, she was like an expert fencer, and she was tearing people up. And then Wednesday's like, I would like to try. And they had an incredible fencing duel. And I don't know if you guys remember, but from like the Addams Family TV show, the Addams Family movies, Gomez Addams was a superior fencer, right? And he must have taught Wednesday how to fence, and she was amazing. They even got to the point she's like, how about no helmets? How about first blood wins? And the teacher's like, well, it's up to her. And I'm like, the teacher said that. So next thing you know, they're going at it. And Wednesday does not win that fight.
So let's see here. You mentioned a Scooby-Doo aspect. Is there some sort of villain, monster, big bad in every episode that gets exposed?
Not necessarily every episode, but that's what it's all leading up to, right? It's almost like one big episode of Scooby Doo where you've got the big bad, but you've got little aspects of things that are going around as well. It's weird because there was actually two big bads, but one of them was actually two different people, and they were all trying to accomplish the same thing. Man, that's kind of tough because it was really layered as far as the bad guys go. The big bad, the actual big bad was named Joseph Crackstone, right? He was basically the one back in the day when the Pilgrims came, and he did, he made the town what it was. He made it safe for the normies, and he shunned, the supernatural, right? And the whole thing was the prophecy that Joe was talking about earlier was that he was going to be resurrected and that he was going to set things straight again, because this school was like here, but truthfully the school brought, money to the city, to the town, right? Because people would come for that. And I don't know, it was really well laid out, it was a show that had you kept you guessing as far as like, oh, who's the bad guy, and they start leaving little bits of information here and here. So you're thinking, oh man, it's the psychiatrist. It's totally the psychiatrist. And I'm thinking, you know what? It's too obvious that it's going to be the psychiatrist. It's not going to be the psychiatrist. Did you ever think that was going to be her, Joe?
Yeah, you mean the therapist? I think it was a therapist.
Yeah, therapist. Right? Yeah. Therapist.
They were trying to throw you sense to, throw you off. But I guess we should have went more detail. So when the guy that tried to kill Wednesday, with the prophecy where they said that she was going to destroy the school.
Yeah.
So now Wednesday's going around trying to investigate to see what that piece of paper is, because it's from a book. So she's going around and she's investigating to see what leads into what. And then the process of her investigating the hide, which is a human that turns into like a kind of like a beast kind of thing. And they do multiple murders within the forest. And so through their investigation, they find out like the reason why the sheriff didn't like the family is because her dad got away with murder. So, so it's like the guy that got murdered had a super crush on his wife at the time when they were going to school. And then in the midst of the fighting, she accidentally kills Thornhill, and he falls down. The mom hangs herself. The dad drinks himself to death. And supposedly the daughter in England went swimming and drowned and never found the body. And so that's where you start to think, like, is Lauren Thornhill really dead, or is she still alive? So now the thing is, who's Laurel Thornhill, which it almost points to like to Alfie's point, a therapist, which it wasn't a therapist.
Yeah, it's cool because like there's this Hyde creature, and of course like Jekyll and Hyde, right? And because of Jekyll and Hyde, you assume that it's going to be one person, right? That there's one person by day, and by night it's the Hyde. But it turns out it's not that way. And then you find out, well, you're looking for Thornhill or Lauren, and you're like, well, yeah, definitely a therapist, because it's got to be a girl, right? And who else in the town could it be? And it's like, oh, wait a minute, the librarian, the normie, could that be her? And then the whole time, like, we're watching the show, so many people are like, oh, it's totally Xavier. Xavier is the Hyde. I'm like, there's no way, dude. That's too obvious, right? And I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it's got to be the coffee boy. And that's someone Joe was talking about, who's the sheriff's son. His name is Lucas, I think. But yeah, Tyler. I was always calling him Coffee Boy. And I'm like, yeah, it's totally Coffee Boy. And because he was just too sweet. He was always there to help. He was always like, he didn't ask too many questions. He was just down for whatever, And I'm like, this guy, he's hiding something, right? And lo and behold, it turns out that he's the Hyde. But the Hydes aren't smart creatures, and there's always someone who's controlling the Hyde, and it's not necessarily somebody shifting into that. So then now we're trying to figure out who is controlling this Hyde, and that's where, lo and behold, the killer reveals herself, and it's the original Lauren, who turns out to be the librarian, and it's Christina Ricci, from the original Addams Family. So she's now trying to kill Wednesday.
That twist would have made me go like.
But wait, there's more. So like
right,
every time the creature killed somebody, they took a body part.
right.
So for Christina Ricci's Marilyn, for Marilyn to summon Joseph, you needed the body parts. And then of course Wednesday's blood, the cliche, I need your blood to, because your ancestor, that's what it is too. We forgot that, Alfie. Like the ancestor put Joseph away, but didn't pull him away fully. And the only way to wake him up from him being trapped in the casket was the blood of an ancestor and the body parts, which he came back to life.
And then you got the big bad, Joseph Crackstone.
Mm-hmm. Which is the weird is, so he couldn't stand witches. This is what I don't get. He couldn't stand witches or anything like that. But dude came back alive and had his wand and was just moving everybody. I was like, wait, what? Now this guy got powers?
Before you guys jump into the big bad and Joseph Crackstone, if I go back and I understand this correctly, I understand that writing is what it is, and there's things that have to happen in order to move the story along. Mm-hmm. None of this would be happening if Wednesday didn't get expelled from her school. So the timing is very perfect. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like Crackstone wouldn't have been able to unveil his plan or anything, except for the fact that Wednesday was there at the perfect time. Does that sound about right?
Well, there was a prophecy. That's that one kid who was trying to kill her. He had telekinesis, trying to drop a gargoyle on her. His mom had the foresight power, and she drew this picture and gave it to him and said, look, this person's going to come and destroy everything you love, this school. So if you find her, you have to kill her. And that was like foretold in the 70s, right? So it was all set up. It's fate. It had to happen.
Okay, it had to be written that way. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
But obviously, the prophecy was wrong. She was there to save the school.
Oh,
it was misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's always the way it is. Like there's a piece of the page missing from the prophecy, or a person passes out before they see the last part of the prophecy. And so it turns out that that it's like they were wrong, and so it's like, they're not bad. So that's what happened basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you ever watch something and you're like, why do I like this? This doesn't make sense. I shouldn't like this.
I look at it like this. Sometimes I'm watching Godzilla movies and I have the audacity to go, really? But up until that moment, I'm totally cool with like a 500-foot irradiated lizard running around. So I look at it. Sometimes you just got to watch a show and just take it for what it is,
Yeah, that's why I enjoyed the show a lot. Like I would recommend it to you to watch it. Totally. As much as it sounds like I'm passionate because of certain things, I just know the stuff that just bugs you, where I can just tolerate it. Like I get what they're trying to do with it, and as long as it's not really pushed on you so aggressively to where like it will bug you. Like it's one of those things where like someone taps you on the shoulder and you turn around, you're like, you couldn't just say, "Hey Joe." You got to tap me on the shoulder. You know what I mean? So, like, you look real quick and like, it's not that bad. I guess I'm just tripping. And that's how that show is. Like, you'll catch stuff and you're like, they moved on from it pretty fast. I'll let it go. And that's the momentum of the show. It just keeps doing that.
Yeah. It's a teeny bopper, supernatural melodrama, love triangle, everything that you're like, oh man, I ain't even trying to watch that, And you watch it, and it's just, I'm gonna say it was well written, even though they had a lot of standard tropes that one would call lazy writing. I think it was well done, and it was well put together. It was well strung together, and it gave you a little bit to help you feel smart. It took a little away from you so that you could feel suspenseful. It played out so well. The formula, it was the formula that worked so well. I mean, you even had like you had the characters. All the characters are great. You had Medusas. You know, you had a kid who was going to go make out with the chick, but he couldn't do it because when he was getting out of the shower, he accidentally looked in the mirror and turned himself to stone. You know, which was only temporary. You know, you had the canoe race. You had the sirens cheating with a siren underwater, pushing the boats to break them up. You had what other supernatural people were there? There was just there was a kid who could talk to bees. You know, he turned out to be like one of the main characters, and he came down and it's all about the hive code, Alan. You know, it's the hive code, man.
He doesn't know what that means.
Well, you know, it's like the bees. They, you know, the way they are, they have their hierarchy, right? And on top of it, one thing that he pointed out is that the queen rules all, and he's like, Wednesday, you're a lot like that queen, you know. And Wednesday, she had so many skills. She was a fencer. Her archery skills were like ridiculous. You know, she would play the cello. They even brought her in there. Like the principal was funny because it was Gwendolyn Christie, the one who was she was in Game of Thrones. You don't watch Game of Thrones, anyways. It was cool because she's like a very tall, like strong woman. And, you know, they did her up so fancy in this. And it was really cool. In one of the interviews, she's like, this is the first time I really ever felt pretty. And I mean, for a woman of her age to say something like that, it was touching. It was impressive. But the principal came up with an idea to try to get Wednesday involved in everything more. So she's like, oh, hey, you played a cello. I heard you played a cello on your balcony one night. She's like, I had the musical group take the cello down to the christening of Joseph Crackstone's statue, which of course she didn't want to have anything to do with. And next thing you know, you find out they had flashbacks. A thing had like run gasoline all in the fountain where they had the thing, and they lit it on fire. The band took off running. Everybody took off running, and she's sitting there with her cello just like metal. It was so metal.
Yeah, there was another show that used that same. It was The Walking Dead that used that same gasoline in the fountain trick a few weeks before. So, Walking Dead did it first. So let me get something straight here. She's good at archery.
Yes.
She's good at fencing.
Yes.
She plays the cello.
Yes.
Isn't that the same character from Hawkeye?
Was it the cello she played in Hawkeye?
I'm pretty sure Kate Bishop played the cello.
Pretty sure it was too.
Yeah, someone feel free to mention that in the comment. Wow, this is so well written. They couldn't come up with any other talents other than the ones that have already been on Disney Plus. That's good.
Yeah, she knew kung fu too.
Right.
Wow.
Oh, she whooped
So she was. Yeah. Another good thing too was Uncle Fester was actually pretty good in this too, Alan.
That's right.
So what I liked about this TV series is two characters that I felt they didn't really do anything with in the first two movies. I never watched the TV show, so I couldn't tell you if they did, but I enjoyed the Thing and Uncle Fester a lot in this TV series too. And then Bianca was pretty dope too, but you know, like they paint her out to be the bad guy, but just like if anything, Cobra Kai taught me, you know, one's perspective is different, you know, to the point like she never felt like he really loved her, you know, on his own, and she's always going to be thinking that. And so who comes in? Wednesday, and now her new man, her ex likes Wednesday. Same thing as Karate Kid.
Yep.
But then towards the end, you know, they end up becoming friends. But you realize towards the end she really isn't that bad. So thus, Cobra Kai has taught us something again.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I hope you gentlemen prove me wrong. So is it Uncle Fester or Lurch who has secret paramilitary training that no one knew about, and he's able to do all this secret spy stuff? Which one is it? Because that wouldn't be lazy writing and a cliche.
Neither, but Uncle Fester, played by Fred Armisen, was a bank robber, and he was on the run. And he was hiding out with Wednesday for a little bit. It was cool. He only showed up for a couple episodes too.
Okay. Yeah. So he had skills. So still, it was one of those things where he was able to do all these incredible, like, sneak into buildings, and he was really good with guns and all that. Okay, I find that to be completely original. I'm really surprised it was like that. Even though I'm not really going to watch season 2. Everybody's talking about this show. In fact, I recently heard a stat, which I'm now going to say wrong and make it completely invalid. But the stat basically said that Wednesday was one of the fastest downloaded or watched shows in Netflix's history. By saying that, I make it true because I can't remember the exact stat. But yeah, it was one of the fastest downloaded shows in Netflix's history, which means they've already greenlit a season 2. What do you guys hope to see in season 2?
Well, you know, they dropped a few little things throughout season 1 that you thought were going to come to fruition. Like somewhere along the line, Wednesday got a bunch of pictures of her, like from a distance. So, and like a note, like, I'm watching you, right? And, you know, you were thinking that it was going to come to fruition at the end, but it didn't. Somebody was still watching her. Something was still going on there. You also had Bianca Barclay. Randomly, through like one of the later episodes, her mom shows up at the school. And she's like, what the heck are you doing here? And her mom calls her by a different name. And it turns out that Bianca's on the run from her mom because her mom works for some guy who likes to use the siren power to do, you know, his bidding so that he can, you know, move up his stature in life or whatever. And she's like, I don't want any part of that. You know, he's not my real father, you know, stuff like that. And so she's actually at the school, like super achieving on her own, right? To stay away from her mom, to get away from her mom. But her mom found her and she's like, I need you to do this for me one time. And then after that, I'll leave you alone. And they left that alone. So something's going to happen there in season 2 as well. I'm not sure if there was any other things that they set up, but I'm sure they're there that we just didn't see. Did you notice anything else, Joe?
No, they're pretty much, you know, to your point, if anything else that I missed through the all the 8 episodes, but that pretty much covers it.
So this whole Bianca thing has left me a little bit interested and also perplexed. It seems like whatever Bianca's mother is asking her to do would have something to do with the school. Otherwise, Bianca's mom could just do it anywhere.
No,
however,
Bianca's mom is aging out and
Yeah.
she's losing her gift. Like as they get older, they're not as potent.
So I changed your question, Alan. Her daughter ran away. And so she ran away, she created a new identity, and she, you know, used her powers to get into the school. And the mom ended up finding her, is what happened.
Yeah, I'm still not following because it feels like all of these sirens, apparently there's good sirens and bad sirens, because there's all these sirens who are willing to wear the magical jewel so that their powers are suppressed. But then there's also sirens out there who are willing to use their powers for profit. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, so why does Bianca's mom specifically need Bianca to do this thing when there's other sirens out there who will very gladly do the same thing for profit and power?
That's the one thing we don't know. We don't know if there's a lot of them out there. But we do know that she's losing her powers. And because she's losing her powers, that's why the dad said to go back and find her and get her to come back to help us. And they create these little bracelets that they sell. It's almost like an info notice kind of thing where they look at those things, and the more a person looks at that, they get hypnotized with what they're saying, and eventually they end up giving her mom and her husband money. And so that's how they take people's money. And because she's using her powers, he tells her to go get your daughter. She needs to come do this, which she says, I'll come and help you out for, I want to say like a weekend or something, like help her get back to where they got to get to. And then she says she's out.
Yeah. The either stepdad or you know, mom's boyfriend, he's running a cult is what it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, there may be other sirens out there, but they're looking out for themselves. They're not looking out for this guy, you know. I'm sure there's some guy in some wife beater shirt in, you know, Florida probably, who's got this one siren under his control, and you know he's like, I need your daughter now because you're too weak. We gotta get more money, you know. So he's looking out for himself. She's looking out for him, but other sirens are probably not interested. They got their own thing going, you know. They're CEOs of major companies.
I'm gonna leave it alone.
I know, right? It doesn't make sense because, like, if sirens can really make men do whatever they need, then why? You know what I mean? Like, what? That guy has powers over her?
She's in love with him, man.
Yes.
Love is a powerful drug. Well, gentlemen, I have to say that normally when you guys talk about something, I'm like, oh my God, I want to watch this. I'm going to rewatch it, whatever the case. But normally when you guys talk about a show, I'm like, yeah. And the thing is, everybody I know has watched this show and said it's really great and I have to watch it.
Yeah.
But we know I watch some trash TV. We know that. I watch some trash shows. There's no way around that. So sometimes things just miss their mark because they're just a little bit too mainstream for me. And I feel like that's probably what's happening with Wednesday. So Wednesday, I don't have a good calendar joke, but Wednesday will not be on my schedule.
Yeah, to me, it seemed like we talked you into it, then we talked you out of it, then we talked you into it, and we talked you out of it. So, real quick, just so since you're not going to probably watch it, Enid, the werewolf, she finally gets to wolf out, right? She gets to go full werewolf, and she's actually a big part of taking down the Hide because the Hide is this, this beast, with claws and fangs, and what's a werewolf? Same thing. So Enid's like, I'm take you down, takes him down. Then the B-boy comes over and takes out the librarian chick. And Wednesday beats Joseph Crackstone. Everybody lives happily ever after. So we think until season 2.
When Joe said B-boy, I was thinking about on the streets. I was like, what? Yeah. Thanks for that one, Alfonso. I was like, what? B-boy's on here. But it was not to be. Okay, here's another cliche, right? So there's always this one character that has a power and they just cannot manifest that power. And it's like final episode, there's someone who's in the corner, they're about to die, and it's like, and then all of a sudden they manifest their power. Is that pretty much what happened here?
That's exactly what happened.
But you're okay with it. That's the thing. Like, a lot of stuff that they did is very cliche, but you're okay with it.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, I can't, like I said, I watch Godzilla movies and I will frequently, be okay with all the nonsense throughout the whole show. So if people enjoy Wednesday and all the cliches, I'm totally cool with that. More power to you. You know what, Alfonso? It seems like you really enjoyed this show. Why don't you go ahead and give us your, I don't know, let's say final thoughts on the show.
Duke said promises 2 episodes. And you know what's going to happen? He's going to get hooked. He's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to go and do 3. And then it's on. And then I suggest you all do it too. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. I've watched the whole series once. In the middle of watching it again a second time with my daughter who didn't watch it yet. And she is loving it, and she doesn't like much because she's 16.
This concludes this episode of the Nerd World Order broadcast. So until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and knights of the Nerd World Order, I am NWO.
We are NWO.
Nerds Redefined. Booyah!